Hi, everyone, and a warm welcome to another episode of the Talkroom series of podcasts. In this episode, we're going to examine the question of how to be your best self. And we do that by examining mental health and well-being and how this applies to people's daily lives. And for those people who have yet to see any of our previous podcasts, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Wendy. A pleasure to have you here as always. A highly experienced, accredited cognitive behavioral psychotherapist and EMDR therapist. You work in private practice and have been involved in the area of mental health and well-being for well over 35 years now. So, as I say, an absolute pleasure to have you here again, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Ian, and a pleasure to be working with you again as well. And I'd like to introduce you as well. Ian, you are a senior accredited National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society member, and also the founder of a very successful counselling service called Hope Therapy and Counselling Services. So, a very warm welcome to you as well.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. So today we're looking at a really really important subject of childhood bullying and how it can impact people both at the time but also later in their adult life is as well.
Yes, Ian. And one of my reasons for choosing this subject today is that I've noticed in my therapy service that the number of people who are coming to me who've had problems as an adult because they've been bullied as a child. Um, and obviously, these traumatic experiences I've noticed have just had a really considerable impact on them as adults. In addition, it's obviously had an impact on the child who's being bullied. And is it okay if I just bring up some common themes?
Yeah, please do. Please do, Wendy.
Thank you. So, for children, um, often the first thing is that they suffer from low self-esteem. For example, they may internalize the negative messages and then begin to believe these negative messages like they are unlikable, flawed, or not good enough. Children then can have anxiety and social withdrawal. The experience of bullying often leads to children being hypervigilant, always on edge, always looking around for something, can't relax, often a fear of being rejected socially, having problems actually making relationships and everything like that, and actually avoiding either making friends at school or getting to know their peers, or school itself is often can become a school phobia because of bullying. Often children can express feelings of depression, common feelings of just feeling sad, helpless, hopeless, and not being able to connect with people often gives them feelings of isolation. Um, and then obviously that can become a vicious circle because if they're not going to school and they're staying at home, these isolation kind of feelings continue. Obviously, a very difficult situation is often though there's a decline in academic performance because obviously if a child's been bullied, significant amount of anxiety and obviously poor concentration can really affect their performance. And the other really sad thing is they often internalize things as they often feel shame about not being able to handle it, and often they would blame themselves. So they would say things like bullying is their fault, and that just reinforces the feelings of shame and guilt they feel already. That's only in childhood, but is it okay if I talk about how that affects people in adults as well?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you. So one research, there's a various researches on this aspect, but I'm taking things from, it's called the Avon Longitudinal Study of Parents and Children, and research from journals such as JMAA Psychiatry and the Lancet Psychiatry. The evidence suggests that adults who are bullied as children are more likely to experience, very severe anxiety, depression, or obviously post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms as well, actually fulfill the criteria of PTSD or actually have the symptoms of it. Still affects their ability to form relationships with others and to trust people in general. Often the self-esteem problems continue Often they are very negative towards themselves. Often they have problems about how they look. Maybe they've been having a nose a certain shape, and then they that sticks with them, and they believe these bullies that they've got this terrible nose, and that's as body dysmorphic disorder or imposter syndrome. You're never good enough or anything. A very sad fact is that often this leads to feelings or thoughts of suicide and self-harm, which is sad that a person can feel still affected by bullying. And it can also affect their academic performance. They feel as they haven't achieved as much as they could have, but also their employment. So they're much more likely to be socially anxious. Again, the lack of self-esteem can affect their ability to work. And obviously, if they've been bullied by somebody in authority, then they can be very fearful of people in authority, which can really reduce their work. So it can be really impactful and have a considerable effect on a person's quality of well-being as an adult.
Sounds as though there's a significant, often really tragic, impact on people's mental health, both at the time, but also later in life as well. If people recognize that there may be still suffering from the effect of childhood bullying, that those things have stayed with them in the way that you describe, what could they be doing? Tell us a little bit about how they might approach that, what might be useful.
Absolutely. And I'm going to concentrate on adults who have been bullied as a child because that's what I've been dealing with a lot. There's a whole load of, stuff you can help a child who's been bullied at school. Okay. So one thing that can happen is somebody from a cognitive behavioral perspective, they would say that you kind of find out that you have beliefs about yourself, very sort of strong withheld beliefs. In CBT, they're called core beliefs. And that means that you have a very strong sense of identity. So a common one would be like, I'm not good enough because I've been bullied, I'm not good enough. Or another very common one, people will always let me down, or people will hurt me. Or another common one is, I don't belong. And you can see how if you carry these beliefs around with you, how much they can affect your life, especially being with other people. And so it's difficult to challenge core beliefs, but it is possible. And the first thing is just to sort of, be clear about what it is that you're saying to yourself would be step one. And the other thing is to actually, okay, how else would you like to describe yourself? Rather than say, I'm worthless, you could say, I'm worthy, I'm worthwhile, or I'm good enough is quite a good one. I'm good just as the way I am.
Mm.
And then you can actually look at evidence to say, well, what makes me good as the way I am? It can take quite a lot of recording and thinking about it. If you do this enough, you start to find the evidence that you are good just as you are. It's quite important just to sort of have a different perspective, really, on what happened as you as a child. So an example could be that, I was being bullied, but that doesn't mean to say I wasn't worthwhile. It just means that, children can be very cruel at that age as well. So it's really important to see yourself differently, that you are a victim in your past, but it doesn't define who you are now. So that's one technique. Another classic cognitive behavior technique is a thought record. And this is one of my favorite techniques that I still use time and time again. It's very simple. And one of the things about it is actually it just really helps you to go through the steps and the process of understanding your thoughts, feelings, and actions and emotions and how they affect each other. Typical thought record would actually just get you to write down a trigger to how you're feeling, right? A situation. An example could be perhaps you saw a bully, somebody that bullied you, you're walking along the road or something like that. And what you notice is that you start to feel the same amount of fear that you did. Okay. And what often happens is there'll be a series of thoughts that go with that fear. So it could be like, is she going to attack me again? Um, or it could bring back a memory or trauma of that, it can bring back a sort of very painful memory. And obviously it can make you feel the physical reaction could be you could start sort of shaking, your heart could be pounding and all that type of thing. And a behavior might be is that you want to sort of withdraw from the situation or hide or actually feel even more shame and everything like that. But the most important thing is to sort of say, sometimes these thoughts are distorted. So it could be, will she attack me again? And that could be an example of a thought. And the idea is really to sort of really examine that thought and try to think, is that really going to happen? Is that likely? What's she going to do? Sort of like run at me with a machete or something like that. And it's about just finding a bit more rational, reasonable, more kinder sometimes thoughts to replace the thought that is she going to attack me again? And the last thing is, what can I do about it? And so the other thing is, okay, how can I cope with this? What I can do is, if I'm worried, I can just keep myself safe. I don't have to approach her. I don't have to acknowledge her or anything like that. This is a past trauma memory. I can actually go and get some work done on these beliefs, but I don't have to engage with that person. I'm perfectly safe. So that's an example of a behavior you can have. And actually just writing that down step by step can really help to get some clarity over what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and how that relates to your behavior. Another CBT called behavior therapy technique is called behavior experiments. This is where you try and put something into practice. It's a very practical way. And one thing I do like about CBT is sometimes it gets you to sort of do things differently. So, for example, a common one that happens is that, say, at work, you've been asked to be doing a presentation. And that means standing up in front of people. And what can actually happen, it can bring back a memory for being bullied where you stood up in a class or something and people have laughed and jeered or mocked you as well. So again, it brings back this painful memory. So the idea is, okay, so if you stand up in work, what do you think will happen? And often the person will say, I've been going to be mocked and jeered and laughed at. And so the idea is, okay, let's just see what happens. So that's what you think was happen. You're going to do a little experiment. You're going to stand up for 5 minutes, say, or talk in a meeting, and let's see if you get mocked and jeered. Now, the other important thing with behavior experiments, which I think is really important, is what happens if you do get mocked and jeered, because you can't guarantee people will deal with that. So the person will think through, okay, number one, it's highly unlikely in this adult situation I'm going to be mocked and jeered. Okay, but if I do, I will bring it up with my manager because that is unacceptable behavior in the workforce. Okay, so they've got a little bit of a strategy B going as well. But the idea is, say they agree, it's like a sort of low level behavior experiment. They talk in a meeting, which they perhaps don't normally, for 5 minutes, and they measure if anybody's mocking and jeering them. And so you would measure if anybody actually says, oh, you look stupid, or that, or if anybody yawns or goes like behind their back. So actually, really being specific about what you observe people doing is part of that experiment. They're very powerful because you're actually getting the person to sort of change their behavior, take a risk. But 99.9%, the actual fear of what will happen never happens. So you get them to change them. So that's another good way of doing it. One of my favorite ones is called imagery rescripting. And this is a well-known and well-researched method for trauma memories. And the idea is that you would perhaps visit a bullying scene in your imagination. And it's very important to remind yourself this is just your imagination. You're perfectly safe right now. But as part of that, you imagine you as a strong adult self go into the memory. And in that memory, number one, you protect your little self who's being bullied. Okay. And you can do that by standing in front of them. You could sort of hug them. You could be there encouraging them, whatever works for you as well. And the second thing you can do is to challenge the bully. So you can actually, as an adult self, say what you like to say to this bully. Almost sort of tell the bully off, or really say what you would have liked to have said at the time. So it's an amazingly powerful technique. Works really, really well. But it's really important that that's done and carefully thought about, because you really are activating the sort of the memory of the trauma. Okay, so it's a very powerful technique, but very good. Okay, another therapy which really helps with bullying is called ACT, and that stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And again, a bit like CBT, you often have beliefs about yourself that I'm unlovable, I'll always be rejected, and that as yourself. Okay. And what's really important is to differentiate the situation by seeing yourself and you're having these thoughts as well. So rather than actually looking at your language and saying, I will always be rejected. Okay, you actually remind yourself that it's just a thought that's going through your brain. It doesn't make it true. You know where it's come from, but it's about actually sort of separating you away from your thoughts as well. And there's some techniques that I think are really good, which I'm going to give a couple to you, if that's okay, Ian.
Thank you.
One of the ones that is not in the app books because it actually came from a client that I was working with. But you also imagine this thought, I'll always be rejected. And you actually take a bat and a ball and you actually put the thought on the actual ball and then you hit it as far away as you can. You give a huge swipe, always miss, and see it go away from you as far away as possible. And people love the action of the hitting it strongly as well, because it gives it some energy as well. So I love that one. And of course, whatever bat and ball, you can use a tennis ball, you can kick it with a football, whatever it is you are. But the idea of kicking it away, I love that one. A more gentle one is actually taking the thought or the feeling or whatever it is and putting on a leaf on a stream, it's called. And you actually sort of see it on the leaf and you see it go down the stream, gently go away down the stream and move away from that one. So that's a quite nice one. Okay. And the other one is just saying to yourself, it is just a thought. I am having the thought that I'll always be rejected just because I'm a thought. And we can also laugh at the other thing I like doing is laughing at thoughts that we have. So I might have a ridiculous thought that I don't know, I'm going to get kidnapped tomorrow. That might be a ridiculous thought that gets into my mind. Just because I have a thought doesn't mean to say it's true. And actually having a lighter view of our thoughts and laughing at the way our minds work and the power of the mind, I think is another really good way that ACT sort of takes things. Another thing that ACT is very good is actually really thinking about what's important to you. And this is often called our values. So how ACT really works is really thinking about the meaning and purpose of our life, what's important to us. And so you can do an exercise where you helps you really think about your core values. And what I mean by that is maybe what's important to you is perhaps because you have been bullied, it's really important that you're a good person now, that you've got morals and ethics, and that you'll stand up for people, that you'll be a very much anti-bully person as well. It could be about learning to trust people again, developing relationships. So my value is I really want to develop more of a deeper or closer connection with people in my life. That could be another value as well. Another value could be around health and well-being. So I want to take good care of myself now. I want to show my value to myself by actually eating well and exercising, making sure that I've got the balance of my hair, of my health. So those are sort of examples, okay. And then what you could do then is actually once you've decided on the values which are important to you, you can sort of set goals behind that. So say I want to be a good person. What does that mean actually in practice? So an example could be is when you go to work, is if you actually hear or notice anybody who's been bullied or discriminated against, your goal will be, okay, I'm going to make sure that is sorted. And it feels as though you're making up for lost time because you've changed that round and you're making that a positive experience in your life as well. So that would be a goal. If you're actually suffering from low self-esteem and your value is to improve your health and well-being, okay, your goal might be is to make sure you exercise on a regular basis. Maybe you have a massage or go to the spa, say once a month if you can afford it. And that would be okay. This is my value that I'm showing for my self-worth. It's very powerful and it's absolutely wonderful kind of way of looking at how to build more meaning and purpose in your life as well. And it's very much focusing on the now. From now, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to work on me and I'm going to work on what's important in my life as well. Okay. Um, the other one I'm going to use is compassion focused therapy as well. And this is learning to be kind to yourself as well. It's understanding that we have a threat system, we have a drive system, but we also have a self-soothing system. So often I talked earlier about hypervigilance as part of a problem with bullying because we don't trust people or think people are going to attack us or be horrible and mean to us. So we've got that sort of like fear of people really can sort of go into sort of social anxiety. So there's actually practices that compassion focused therapy do, and one of them is really called a soothing rhythm breathing, where you actually breathe in a way which is very soothing and very calming. And you practice that a lot, and you actually get very good at actually sort of self-soothing yourself, so that if you do feel a threat comes up, if you feel somebody looks at you funny at work or anything like that, you just go and spend a couple of minutes just doing some deep breathing, some self-soothing breathing, and actually you can just feel yourself learn to regulate yourself and feel a bit calmer as well. Another one I love is actually learning to be more compassionate towards yourself. And one way you can do this is to imagine a person. It could be your best friend, it could be your dog, it could be a superhero, whatever it is, coming in and actually being kind to yourself as well. So sometimes we're very hard to be kind to ourselves. Sometimes we need an alternative voice to come in and say, you know, Ian, you're a good person. You're doing fine. It's okay. I'll protect you. I'll be fine. I'll stick up for you. I'll be your ambassador as well. Just imagine that person coming and being with us. And imagine again, you'd be very protective as well. You can imagine that person protecting you as well. So you can use your imagination how that person works with you as well. So it's really good to actually feel a little bit more calmer as well. Another one that you can use in compassion focused therapy is imagining a calm, safe place, a place where you can go, ideally a place you've been to, which you associate with calm, relaxed, peace, sort of a happy memory. Often people would choose a beach holiday where they've been able to relax or walk through some gentle waves or just be in the waves or whatever it is that sort of suits you as well, as long as you feel safe. And again, if you see that threat coming, again, it can happen with somebody at work, just saying a word, like even a joke. Oh, that was really crap what you did the other day. You know, it's meant in a joke, but that can really activate all these very traumatic memories and actually make the person remind themselves of being bullied. So you can actually go back to your calm, relaxing place and soothe there and actually feel as though you've calmed down again. And you can then say to yourself, it was really a joke and I don't need to react to that as well. Another one which is really, really good is to often people who've got bullying problems have often got a really harsh inner critic. They've got that horrible voice going on to themselves as well. And what you can do is say to yourself, write down the critical voice is what it's saying, and then use your compassionate person to say, okay, what can I write back to the inner critic, that bully? So the inner critic would say something like, you've done it again, you failed, haven't you? Haven't phoned your friend because you don't trust her, because you fear that she will bully you like before again. And then get that compassionate friend, that person to answer back and say, it's okay. You know, you've been through a lot. You struggled to trust people. You've managed to do it, not do it this time, but you know, I encourage you to be brave again, do it again. The inner critical voice would come back and said, "You failed, you stupid person. You're never going to change. You're always going to be a weak person, just giving in to nothingness." And then you write back and send the compassionate person help to say, that's just from the past. You, inner critic, are from the past. I'm changing. I'm learning to love myself again. I'm learning to be strong. I might be vulnerable, but I'm learning to be strong. And I will phone my friend because she's not like my past relationships and I can trust her as well. So you can hear how that to and froing can go as well. It's a very powerful technique to actually deal with the inner critic. And then another one you can do is to write a letter. And this is very powerful as well. You can write a letter to your younger self and actually just empathize as again as a compassionate process and sort of say you've really been through a lot. It wasn't your fault. People were mean to you. You did nothing wrong. So many people are bullied nowadays, and it can have a devastating effect. Um, but I believe you're strong and you can get through this as well. Um, and you can actually, in a therapy session, you can actually read it out to the therapist, or you can record it and listen to it again and again as well. So you can really reinforce that. And there's something very beautiful about just that idea of being kind to yourself and understanding yourself and doing that as well. Of course, got two more if that's okay. So often what can happen is like the hypervigilance or the lack of self-esteem, you can feel a high level of distress. And sometimes, as I said before, it can be very significant. People can be suicidal or self-harm from the actual memories that they've had as childhood bullying. It can be very intense. So one thing you can do is it's called TIP from this is from dialectical behavior therapy, another different type of therapy. But what this means is that you can actually, if you feel overwhelmed by these feelings, you can just do something like change your temperature. So you can just splash cold water on your face. It just shocks you out of the situation. Or use ice cubes as well is a very good one. Or do some very intense exercise, or again, just do some breathing techniques as well. So something quite physical to shake you out of that distress as well. Another very good one is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method.
Mhm.
And basically, you can go through your senses. It doesn't really matter which ones you do in order, but you go through what 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you can taste as well. And it just sort of brings you back into the here and now in a very powerful way as well. And it's sort of a bit of a distraction against that, but that's a really, really good one. Another one which I like is called stop. And it's just such a simple, easy word to remember. Just say to yourself, stop. Okay? Stop. Say it in a nice way. Just take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully as well. So just actually practicing that is a very simple technique and just saying stop and just taking time out and just really understanding what you've gone through again with compassion and say just proceed mindfully means just stay in the here and now. Just go and do something which is very much in the here and now focus. It could be anything simple like making a cup of coffee, doing some washing up, but just go and do something where you're in the here and now as well. And DBT often uses emotional regulation tools because what actually happens is you often feel overwhelmed by the emotion. You often feel over the fear and the horror comes back to you as well, and it can be overwhelming. So it's actually really good to actually understand you can learn to regulate your emotions as well. And one thing can be what DBT recommends is opposite action. So a good example is anxiety. What happens with anxiety is people go into fight or flight mode. So they often withdraw or freeze as well. They often freeze, don't do anything, or they go and hide. So if you're very anxious, you feel the best thing you can do is to avoid that situation. What DBT recommends actually is to do the opposite. And that could be quite sort of scary, really, to do the opposite as well. So, say somebody did go to you and sort of said, oh, you're stupid, aren't you, at work, which would be a horrible thing to say to anybody, really. The idea is that you wouldn't just shrink, you'd actually go and approach that person and say, I think you said I was stupid. Could you perhaps tell me why you said that to me? What's your evidence that I'm stupid? You go and challenging them. So it's very powerful, but can be quite scary as well. So actually doing the opposite. Another example is if you feel depressed, most people want to withdraw. They want to stay in their beds. They want to sort of put the duvet over the head. They don't want to engage in everything like that. The opposite action is the best, is actually to get out there, try to build up more community connections, try to get out there, try to get out of bed and do something as well. So the opposite action applies as well. So that's quite a good one to think about. The other thing to do regarding an opposite action is to, if you feel actually low and tired and exhausted, is to try to construct positive experiences as well. And that might be very hard to do, but it's really important to do things that actually maybe it could be a film that makes you laugh a little bit. It could be just going out into the garden, enjoying some flowers if you're lucky enough to have a garden. If not, if you're lucky enough to go to a park, it's just do something actually quite joyful and meaningful. And it doesn't just shift, it doesn't just suddenly go away, the depression, but it does actually stop it getting worse because the more you stay, the more you avoid, and the more you stay in bed, the more likely you are to want to stay there. And you lose the skills of actually going out there and exploring the world and everything like that. So it's actually sort of just making sure you don't sort of go backwards as well. And these are all skills you can learn as well. And sometimes by doing it again and again, you suddenly build the confidence of doing it as well. The more you sort of do confront people who say you're stupid, you just get better at it as well. So you actually learn from those skills. I think I've covered a lot in this session, and I think what's really important is some of these are very easy to do on your own, and sometimes it's okay to actually work with a therapist. Like, how do I develop a compassionate friend? It sounds easy in practice, but it's really important, perhaps, that you learn some skills by that. So that's where it can be very useful. The other thing I want to say is quite important if you're doing any trauma work. I also recommend that you're in a stable emotionally as well. I don't recommend you do that if you've got problems with suicide or self-harm or quite severe depression. Always best to work from a resource area first and to build up your skills in that area before you go into something which can be quite upsetting and traumatic. That's just a general rule of therapy. And I think it's really important that people hear that. Hopefully, there are some ideas there that people can actually take away.
Wow, Wendy, that's such a thorough, such a detailed explanation of these things. So thank you so much for just taking the time to go through all of that. Really fascinating to listen to, and lots of ideas, both for those people that want to work on their own and just have some ideas of strategies that they may try to incorporate on day-to-day life, but um, also ways that if they were to reach out to a therapist, that they might work on as well. So, with that in mind, if somebody did potentially want to reach out and to work with somebody else, how would they go about that? What would be the next steps for somebody if they've listened to you talk and think, okay, I want to engage with this now? How would they go about that?
So the best way to contact me is just my name is wendycastellino.com. That's the name of my website, and it should just come up there. And it has ways of contacting me there. It tells me a little bit more about myself. It's got free resources on there as well. It's got an ebook on how to deal with stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. It's got some meditation exercises and some other sort of benefits. It's also got all the podcasts that we've done and YouTube as well and social media. So there's a lot of resources that build up over the years. I mean, you're very welcome to go to any therapist who you feel can help you with bullying. It doesn't have to be me. So I do think it's if you're really suffering and you're really feeling it's holding you back, I always think it's best to sort of deal with the trauma and recover from it as well. And then you're free to enjoy the rest of your life. What about you, Ian? How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we have a relatively large team. We've got 80 or so counsellors within the team. We're dotted around in a whole variety of different places. And we work in a variety of different ways, and you've mentioned a variety of ways today. So if people are interested in just exploring what next steps might look like, we offer a free initial consultation to people. They can just contact us via the website, which is www.hopeforminds.co.uk. That's www.hopeforminds.co.uk, and we'll just talk through things in a little bit more detail in a really non-pressurized sort of way. We'll talk about the different approaches, what might be most suitable for them, character of the counsellor that might be most appropriate to if people don't feel they're quite ready to actually start, but they're just kind of exploring, they're at that stage where they just want to try some things on their own, then again, the website is a really good place to start. We have lots and lots of free resources on the website. So people can just take a look at our resource section, and there's lots and lots of information there as well. Um, so really just for me to thank you, Wendy, for what has been such a fascinating area of conversation today, such an important subject and such a fascinating subject, and such an impactful subject as well. So thank you so much, and thank you so much to all of our listeners for being with us today as well.
Yes. Thank you, Ian, and thank you very much, listeners. Yes. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now.